Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's event, Collaborating for Peace, Reflections Emerging from a Recent Practice from the Global South. My name is Josefina Chavarria. I am the director of the Peace Accords Matrix and the Legacy Projects at the University of Notre Dame. Today, I am delighted to share this space with all of you who are coming from all over the world and have the official presentation of Maria Paula Prada's fantastic report, What Makes International Partnerships Meaningful in Transitional Processes, the case of the Colombian Truth Commission from 2018 to 2022. So today we're going to use this report as a way not just to launch it, but also as the basis for our conversations. And for that, I am really pleased to welcome back, so to speak, Maria Paula Prada to the Kroc event. Maria is a Colombian advisor and facilitator with extensive experience in institutional coordination for political engagement and public diplomacy. Her focus includes dialogues, peace, and transitional justice processes. She was a Kroc Fellow, so she was here with us at the University of Notre Dame for over a year, and we really had a fantastic experience learning from her and with her about the best practices and lessons learned from the Truth Commission, particularly, but more in general, about the practice of peace building. And part of that Kroc Fellowship was also the beginning of the writing process for this report. So it's really beautiful to see it come to fruition. In today's event, besides Maria, the author, we will also have some commentaries and opening remarks by Dr. Emma Murphy. Emma is a postdoctoral research associate here with us at the Kroc Institute for Irish Studies and at the Kroc Institute for International Peace Studies at the Keele School for Global Affairs. She has been working with us at the Legacy Project too for I think also a bit more over a year. She earned her doctorate in politics and international relations from the University College Dublin, where she was an Irish Research Council Laureate Award affiliate fellow. Her doctoral research focused on identifying and understanding an alternative to liberal approaches in transitional justice design in Colombia, Northern Ireland, and Uganda. And in the form of a wonderful video that she sent in advance, in this event, we also have Dr. Gwen Burnyatt. She is a lecturer in social anthropology at the University of Edinburgh, a political anthropologist who has been working in Colombia on peace, conflict, and politics for over 14 years as both a scholar and a peace-building practitioner. She's now beginning comparative research on political device in Britain, building on her experience in the Colombian peace process. As a peace-building practitioner, her experience covers human rights, dialogue facilitation, peace processes, and transitional justice, including the International Center for Transitional Justice and also the Anglo-American peace-building organization Rodemos el Diálogo, RED, or Embrace Dialogue. So in the next hour and a half, we're going to speak about the international cooperation, the alliances that made possible the work of the Colombian Truth Commission. And the way we have structured this event is to really invite the dialogue and exchange, not just among our panelists, but also with all of you who are joining us. So my first invitation is for all of the participants and attendees to introduce themselves in the chat. We're going to use the chat for exactly. Thank you so much for those presentations. And we will have the Q&A function in the Zoom as a way of sending your questions to the panelists. So we will start first with a few minutes in which Dr. Emma Murphy is going to share with us some overview comments about the work of the Commission, the unique elements of the Colombian Truth Commission, and of course, in the importance of this legado, of this ownership that has really made the Truth Commission in Colombia, I would say, a world example. Then we will have the main author of the report, Maria Paula Prada Ramírez. She's going to be presenting some of the main theses, the main insights from this publication, which you can already download from our website, from the Kroc website in English, and very soon you will also be able to download and read the Spanish version. And finally, we will have the video that Dr. Gwen sent. We hope to have at least 30 minutes at the end of this event for dialogue and conversation among the panelists and with all of you, the attendees. So without further ado, let me hand over the microphone to Dr. Emma Murphy.
Thank you so much, Josefina, and thank you so much to Maria for giving me the opportunity to speak and to the Kroc Institute for hosting this space. As Josefina mentioned, I'm a postdoctoral researcher here at the University of Notre Dame, and my research centers on transitional justice design, mainly in Northern Ireland and Colombia. I first became interested in the Colombian Truth Commission during my PhD when I was investigating approaches to institutional design that displayed what I call agonistic characteristics. So an agonistic institutional design which would embrace contestation, multiplicity, and dissent as a way of creating opportunities for transformation was accused of being impossible to translate into practice, even if it sounded interesting theoretically. These approaches stood in sharp contrast to more traditional peace-building approaches, which focused mainly on finding common ground and trying to move beyond differences between people and groups. I had read through the text of hundreds of peace accords, trying to find cases where it might be possible to understand whether these agonistic transitional justice mechanisms actually existed. I also wanted to know more about what their effects on peace and the transformation of some of the underlying relational dynamics that had led to the conflict in the first place might be. When I began reading through the Commission's methodology and speaking to people about its work, I realized that it was exactly what I've been hoping to find and much more. The Colombian Truth Commission is unlike any other truth commission I've come across. Rather than trying to bring thousands of perspectives about over 60 years of conflict into a single narrative about the past, the Commission preserves a multiplicity of stories, creating space for perspectives delivered in the form of testimonies, artwork, photography, dance, sound, and other media. These new forms of narrative sharing allow different ways of knowing to take center stage. The Commission incorporates perspectives that disrupt Western understandings of what counts as truth about a conflict. They also showcase what a true openness to listening and understanding can look like. Rather than assuming that they understood all the different types of harm that had been perpetrated during the conflict, members of the Commission staff approached the recognition of harm inductively, creating opportunities for recognizing new forms of harm rather than relying on simplistic or reductive ideas of what had happened. Instead of delivering only a final report, the Commission's outputs took the form of a transmedia platform that includes practically endless ways of engaging with the narratives uncovered throughout the Commission's period of operation. These narratives break down these reductive, simple explanations about why the conflict occurred and who the actors involved in it were. The result of the Commission's work is not a definitive and consensus-oriented description of the conflict, but instead the creation of an opportunity for ongoing dialogue and conversation. I was fortunate enough to have the chance to meet Maria during her fellowship at the University of Notre Dame, where she very patiently spent many hours explaining the intricacies of the Commission's work to me. One of the questions I was most fascinated by was the question of how the Commission created and maintained the network that it fostered, both during and after its operations. I was and still am amazed not only by the sheer number of organizations, partners, and individuals involved in contributing to and disseminating the Commission's work, but also the commitment that these allies, as they're commonly known, have in engaging deeply with the Commission and the range of activities that these allies have come up with. These activities range from academic panels on the Commission's final report, to artistic engagements with the transmedia platform in schools, to ritual readings accompanied by music of the testimonial volume of the Commission's final report. In one of my recent trips to Colombia, I was struck by the way that some of the Commission's allies would talk about the Commission with a sense of ownership. They repeatedly described the way that the Commission's method of collaboration and co-creation really made them feel like the Commission was their organization. Although the organizations I was speaking to were local NGOs based in Colombia, the same sense of commitment to the Commission's work and goals is also true of the Commission's international partners. The significance of the international component of the Commission's partnerships is even greater in the current global context, where bilateral and multilateral relationships are increasingly fraught. In a time when fostering cooperation between international partners seems next to impossible, the lessons from this report and from Maria's experience are particularly important. As Maria will show us, the process of building trust and developing collaborative projects is a delicate, fragile endeavor, but one that allows for results that would have been completely unfeasible for any individual actor. As the world continues to grapple with questions of how to find ways of working together, especially for peace, the insights Maria will share are critical to finding new paths forward. I am delighted that Maria is able to share her wealth of experience and knowledge with us today with the launch of this report. One of the core ingredients to all of this success, I would definitely argue, is Maria herself. Maria has an absolutely unparalleled ability and commitment to bringing together partners to work for peace, regardless of any obstacles that may present themselves. While she doesn't give herself nearly enough credit within the report, I believe she'll share with us the importance of fostering open and transparent communication as a core component of building partnerships based on trust. With that, I'll turn it over to the wonderful Maria so she can share some more concrete insights. And just a reminder to please put any questions in the Q&A box. Maria.
Thank you, Emma, and good morning to everyone. It is really a pleasure to be here. Time goes by really quickly. It is already 3 years since the Commission finished its work, and I'm very happy to have the possibility to still be working around these issues, and you will see why. So thank you so much, Emma. Thank you, especially Josefina and all the Kroc Institute and all the team for the time I spent there, but also for making this space possible. And I have seen in the participant list some colleagues from the Truth Commission. It's an honor to be with you again and always. And also some colleagues, former fellows and allies from the Truth Commission during the time of the Truth Commission, but also still working on the legacy of the Truth Commission. So thank you so much. I'm gonna share my screen. So please let me know if it is working. It's okay.
Maria, we can see the screen, but it's not on that. Now it's presentation. Perfect. Thank you.
Takes a bit. Okay, great. So, thank you again. Thank you for all those who joined the session and decided to be here instead of doing also so many other things that are relevant and important for peace building nowadays in this world. So I wanted to begin with this. All the images you will see are part of the archive of the Truth Commission, and it is a honor for me to be here. And somehow I feel it is also my service to peace, and the work I did in the Truth Commission allowed me to be a fellow of the Kroc Institute and to be able to be in these spaces. And I think that the deepest motivation to do it is for the victims and for non-recurrence, so that we don't have more victims in Colombia, but also in the name of all of the victims that we have already had in this country, and also the victims in the world. So allow me to have this presentation also in the name of those persons. As Josefina mentioned and Emma already, I'm gonna present some of the main contents of the recent policy report, which name is What Makes International Partnerships Meaningful in Transitional Processes, the case of the Colombian Truth Commission. It is based in the experience that we had. The report is already available in English and would be very soon available in Spanish too. And so these are the contents for the presentation. It will be 6 items that I would like to share with you. And as Josefina said, I would love to have the opportunity to have some questions and answers also with Emma, so that we can have a bit of a conversation and interaction in the room, because a lot of you are also very experienced in these subjects. And so it would be great to have the opportunity to exchange with you. So let me begin. The first element I would like to highlight, it is that there were at least two parts in this relationship. On the one side, the Truth Commission, and you can see here under the arrow, these were 4 commissioners, or 3 commissioners, and the Secretary General of the Truth Commission in this picture. It was one of the sessions that we had with the international community, and all of the rest are members of the international community in Colombia. And one of the very important elements in the document or in the report is that we, of course, don't think that international community is homogeneous. We understand that the differences in the roles, in the mandates, in the nature of their cooperation or support. But for us, in our strategy and in our work, we labeled them all under an international community. And here you have some examples of the type of actors and institutions that were part of this international community, beginning with formal official diplomat corps, embassies, and bilateral agencies and multilateral agencies, but also including civil society organizations, philanthropic and private foundations, universities, and think and do tanks. So it was for us all part of this universe of international actors. It was in total over 400 actors that were allies and supporting the Truth Commission in different ways during our mandate, and some of them who still cooperate for the appropriation, social appropriation or popularization or sustainability phase of the report and the results of the Truth Commission. I wanted to share with you, this is part of my personal archives from my work during the Truth Commission. This is one of the sessions that we had with the international community. It was part of the work we did was sharing at the beginning who was part of the meeting. And then you can see here we had 22 embassies present in that meeting. This was in the year 2021, we had 11 ambassadors, and we had almost all of the chiefs of these United Nations offices also present, as well as academic institutes or the ICTJ. So this is to share with you how it was lived in the moment while we were meeting. You can see here still the logo from the Truth Commission. So this is part of my archives, and it was one of the forms that we have to share and to be in touch, in contact, and in permanent communication with the Truth Commission, where 2 sessions during the year where we had a political dialogue, but also we had the opportunity to share with the international community which were our plans, which were the challenges that we were facing, and also to coordinate this entire political and financial support for the Truth Commission. So this was an example of one of those sessions, almost at midterm of our work. Okay, then regarding some elements that you can read in detail in the document, we would say that the Truth Commission had 3 main contributions from the international community that we defined on political backing, technical assistance, and financial support. And that's very important to see the difference between those 3, and also the complementarities among them. And those also all related all the time to the context, what was going on in Colombia and how the peace process was emerging, and how we needed different actors in different moments with different abilities to support and to strengthen our work. So in total, as I mentioned before, over 400 international allies in Colombia and also abroad. we were able to have $10 million as support yearly. And it's very important to see which was the ratio with the national budget to comprehend also that this institution was financed with also a very important amount from national budget, not as it is the case in other countries where the international community has a very important percentage of the budget. And this is also part of this national ownership and this locally owned or nationally owned peace process. Even though it was very important sum and it allowed us to do things and to go beyond the things that we could have done only with a national budget. In total, we have over 300 projects with 35 different funding sources. And you will see that's in another slide that's also part of one of the challenges that we had, having so many funding sources. And these 300 projects were divided for us in two different types of projects. Those called structural projects that were meant to strengthen directly the institution, the Truth Commission, its teams or computers or different things that we needed to fulfill the mandate and the methodology that we have defined. But very important here is also to share that we had 123 projects that we call trilateral projects, and those were projects that were supporting the mandate of the Truth Commission, but were not developed by the Truth Commission team. They were developed together with civil society organizations. And I think that's one also of our lessons learned, is that the institution was not capable of doing all what it needed to be done without the support and the collaboration of the civil society, because of the time, because of the knowledge, because of the relations that needed to be created in such a short period of time. So it was very important for us to collaborate and cooperate from the beginning with civil society. As you can see, a very important part of the budget that came from the international community was directed to these organizations in a very collaborative and coordinated manner. You can see here, this is in the picture, that's part of the transmedia that Emma was mentioning at the beginning. In one of the tabs, it was very important for us to let everyone know with whom we worked in order to make the report possible and all the dialogue, social dialogue process, who were our allies. And here I just brought an example from those international allies living outside of Colombia. Here is the United Kingdom, where we had 68 allies. So that's just an example so that you can see. After the United Kingdom, I think the other country where we had the most allies is the United States, and I think after it is Spain. And you can see those allies are universities or civil society organization or different type of actors that were supporting the mandate. So these are just a bit of facts and figures about this meaningful collaboration. Not to forget that this was all done within 3 years. At the end, almost 4 years, but it was creating a lot of relationships and maintaining them during the Truth Commission and some of them that are still working on these issues. For a meaningful collaboration, it's very important, to have in mind also which are the political conditions or the context conditions that are happening in order for this relationship to flourish. So what we learned in the Truth Commission is that there were 3 elements that were very important for the creation and the maintenance of these political relationships. One, and maybe the main, is the context, which is the context where the relationship is going to be established and developed. Then the mandate, which are the topics and which are the elements that are going to bring us together. And then the methodology, the way how you do the work also allows or not more allies or less allies to come together and to support you. So that's very important, this triad, context, mandate, and methodology. I'm not going to mention all of these issues, and maybe you are very aware of those. But in the context, we have a very challenging political situation. When the Truth Commission began, there was very high levels of polarization in Colombia and of illegitimacy of the peace accord because of the failed referendum. So we were a public institution that were beginning our work. We had 3 years only to fulfill our mandate, but from the beginning there was a lot of political tension that was going, as we used to call it, those were winds against us. So having the political backing of the international community was really useful and needed for us to come forward, to come to open the society for collaborative work, to listen, to explain which was our mandate. It helped a lot to come with a lot of the international actors for the first time to these spaces with the victims and with the responsible or perpetrators in Colombia. I'm not going to mention all of them, but another one that I would like to mention is that we were also facing during our mandate the COVID pandemic, and that also made us change all our mode of delivery, as it did for all of you, for sure, in what you were doing in that time of history. The additional challenge for us was that our work was based on listening to the people, and listening via internet and listening to the testimonies was not what we thought and not what the victims would have liked to have. But that was the reality. And there, once again, the international community helped us, and they were very flexible and very efficient to support the institution in the way we needed in order to adjust all our planning to be able to continue our work in the middle of that really unexpected situation. Regarding the mandate, it was very difficult and challenging for us to fulfill that mandate within that context in 3 years, because as any Truth Commission, we needed to explain what happened, why it happened, who did it, and what to do in order to avoid that from repeating. But the time frame for the analysis was 60 years of armed conflict, over 10 million victims, a diversity of violations, human rights violations, as you know, and also a diversity of armed actors. So it was a really huge task. And this Truth Commission, in comparison to others, didn't have, like, we had the mandate to clarify or for truth seeking as other Truth Commissions, but besides that, we had also the mandate to promote peaceful coexistence and non-recurrence. And so it was a very broad mandate, and additionally, the decree that created the institution described 13 different elements we needed to search on really deeply, which made the task very, very, very big. And that's, I would say, one of the reasons why we also have such a broad report, because the report is answering to all of those elements that were asked from us. So that was also, in the sense of the relationship building, it was a very broad mandate with a lot of subjects, with a lot of actors in a very long time period. But that also allowed a lot of allies internationally and nationally to support us, because they were able to identify different topics and subjects and moments and actors that were also relevant for themselves. So that's also one of the elements. That's why I say that the mandate is also one of the conditions that allow you to have more or less allies. And finally, the methodology. The Truth Commission decided to have a research that is an inductive research. One commissioner called us as a listening device. And that was, again, another opportunity to have a lot of allies and a lot of collaboration also internationally, because we were promoting participatory processes. We were tackling to a lot of subjects like gender, LGBTQI communities, ethnic peoples, exiled population, culture and arts. So there, once again, a lot of allies felt that they could contribute or they could come together, they can support the Truth Commission in order to reach all those subjects in all over Colombia. We had 28 offices around Colombia, but we were also working together with allies in 24 countries. So that was, again, a possibility to connect. And yeah, there is where I say a lot of these elements wouldn't have been possible, or the Truth Commission wouldn't have been able to bring all these topics to concrete results if there wouldn't have been such a diverse and engaged cooperation with the international actors and also with national actors. This statement that I have at the end was one of the sentences that the president of the Truth Commission, Francisco Roux, repeated us from the beginning. And I think this also shows why there was an openness for the collaboration. And it was that the task of truth seeking and non-recurrence was bigger than the institution and the team. So we somehow needed cooperation. Also because we understood our job as a contribution to Colombia's peace-building initiatives and process in time of 3 years, but we recognized that there were a lot of allies working on this before the Truth Commission, and as I mentioned before, that a lot of persons, institutions, organizations in Colombia are still working in this horizon of peace-building and non-recurrence in Colombia. The fourth element I would like to share are what in the report I call the 7 enabling factors for this political relationship to happen. Why was it possible to have so many allies, to have such a great collaboration, to have this political, permanent, unanimous backing? It was one of the examples of it, which is still being mentioned as an example at the United Nations, is that since the peace agreement was signed and during the entire mandate of the Truth Commission and still now, the implementation of the peace agreement in Colombia has the entire support of the UN Security Council. And that was the way it happened also for the Truth Commission. All the members of the Security Council that were part of the 5 permanent members and the other members that changed, they all supported the Truth Commission unanimously, and that was also very important for us, as I mentioned, in this context when we began and during our entire mandate. The government that was ruling Colombia was the government that was promoting the no, was promoting the vote against the peace accord. So it was very important for the institution that the international community was backing our work and the work as a listening device. And so the question, how is it possible? What make this experience possible in this way? I offer 7 insights. 3 from each of the parts of this relationship, as I mentioned, the Truth Commission and the international community. But as I said, there were at least 2 parts, because there was also the civil society, I would say, that was a very important key actor in this relationship. And that's the last enabling factor that I mentioned. So there are 3 enabling factors. The first 3 that you can see here and in the report are regarding the international community. They were capable of recognizing Colombia's sovereignty as well as its knowledge, experience, and capacities for peace. That's what I also heard in the interviews that I did for this report, that it was clear for them that the first thing that we needed was not technical assistance or knowledge or experiences, but really they knew that Colombia has a long story of peace building, a lot of initiatives that have been done by civil society, also very good experiences at the institutional level, and that they recognized that from the beginning. So that was very important. Second, as I already mentioned, the unanimous political support that we had from the entire international community. And third, and if you can remember still the flags and the logos that I showed at the beginning, you would see countries from all over the globe. So that was also very significant and important for us. And then third, the long-term and comparative perspective. That was very important that the international community brought that into our work. Because whenever you are in the middle of the transition and trying to contribute for things to really happen, and you really want them to move quickly, and there are a lot of moments of where things don't really work like you wanted, or where you have COVID, or when you have a national strike, or when social processes just change. It was always very good to have those international or outsider voices who shared with us other experiences, how they faced those challenges, or how long it took for other countries to recognize responsibility, or how there are still countries that where the truth is still a mystery. So it was really important in those moments to have these perspectives from coming from outside, but also some international allies who, for example, worked the first time in Colombia 10 years ago, and they were back in Colombia, like during the Truth Commission, and they were also encouraging us to see the changes that were really happening within Colombia and to still keep on going through this difficult phase, but with all the engagement to advance in the task. So those were like 3 elements that we identify, or that I identify in this report, that were really added values that came from the international community and that they brought to this relationship. From the side of the Truth Commission, the next 4 points, the ethical engagement and collaborative approach from the leadership to institutional action. You can see on the right side, Francisco de Roux, he was the president of the Colombian Truth Commission, and all the international community agreed upon that having him as a leader of the institution was already very significant for all of them. They knew about his trajectory, they knew about his voice for the victims, his voice for reconciliation in Colombia, and somehow they said that they felt that his values and what his life history was able, they were able to see it in the events that we were creating, in the way that we were very taking care of the details of the work that was being done with the victims. And they also had the testimonies. When I say they, the international community, some of them mentioned that they had the testimonies from a lot of victims around Colombia when the international actors were asking them about the process with the Truth Commission, that the victims were telling them, we feel deeply heard. They are really taking into consideration our testimonies and our voices, and that makes the difference. So that is one element that came from the Truth Commission. The other one, which I named Quality, Innovation, and Legacy of Peace Building and Transitional Justice in Colombia and Globally. That's also a lot of international allies recognized that the team of the Truth Commission was not only coping to the national and international standards until the beginning of the Truth Commission, but that the team was somehow always trying to bring more elements into the conversation conceptual or methodological elements, innovating, and also at the same time that we were doing the work, that we were working on lessons learned and working on bringing our methodologies together in order to leave all that available for Colombia, but also for other countries. So they were really also wanting to support that. They say that Colombia is one of the countries that has done a lot of work already and developed a lot of legislation and concepts and methodologies for peace building. And if this Truth Commission wants to keep on producing knowledge and sharing their experience with the world, we also want to be part of that. So that was also kind of a motivation to support that work. And finally, the strategy of cooperation and partnerships consistent with the mandate and then a specific team assigned to it. And then the other picture that you can see on the right is the team that was at that moment the biggest that we had in numbers. Like this Office of International Cooperation and Alliances began with 3 persons, and at the end that was a bigger team who made this all possible in the framework of the Truth Commission, of course, in the service of the presidency. But that's also one of the things that the international actors recognized very much during the interviews, is the organization, the communication that was established with them permanently, how they were part of the process. It was not like sometimes happens, receiving the money and not sharing with them the process and the moments and the significant moments, but how we really allowed them to be part of the process. Besides the financiation, how also we managed to have so many actors, so many support from embassies and international offices, that we had a logo policy where we always wanted victims and civil society and all the persons that were participating in our processes to remember that this was a national process, and it was a national institution. A Colombian institution that was facing all this, and which responsibility relied also on us. So we used to have only our logo in all the sessions. And we used also, as I mentioned before, to have 2 meetings yearly with all the international community present in Colombia. Also during COVID, it was online, in order to let them know how we were working on our mandate, and so that they could also program themselves to be part of it, but also be capable of telling their own governments how this was going on, and to keep on strengthening the political support, which was the most relevant and important that we could have had in the Truth Commission. And finally, the 7th enabling factor, as I briefly mentioned before, was civil society. I call it the invisible backbone of a reliable partnership. And it was really with the work together with civil society, we were able to advance very much, not only in the partnerships, but also, as I mentioned before, in our mandate. And civil society was it was like a lot of the members of the Truth Commission that were working in the Truth Commission and were public officers for the first time came before from civil society initiatives. So it was very quickly understood how the work needed to be done between a state and institution and civil society organizations, and how together it was very quickly possible to build trust relationships in order to serve the work and the implementation of the peace agreement, but also to maintain the support of the international community. One concrete example of this issue is, for example, supporting the exile. It was because a lot of initiatives of civil society outside Colombia were keen on working and giving their testimony to the Truth Commission in Colombia, that it was possible to get some international support for that to happen. So that was also very important, and one of the enabling factors for this political relationship to flourish. There were, of course, also challenges. I mentioned 3 in the report. So the first one, and it's very known, is a bureaucratic challenge. And as I mentioned already, having 300 projects in 3 years with over 35 different sources meant different formats, different ways of monitoring, of evaluating, of all. And that was a burden also for the team, not only for the team of the Office of International Alliances and Cooperation, but also for all of the thematic teams that were receiving the money. But somehow we managed to to work around that. But that's one of the issues that is also very important whenever working with different sources. The other 2 that are more political and were more difficult to get along is the dissonance of international presence. And with this, I mean, and in the interviews came about this idea that a lot of the ambassadors or all of those that were supporting our job and that were present at our events, of course, were engaged with peace and peace building. But at the same time, the difficulty to relate the economic relationship of their countries with our countries and peace building with Colombia, like the difficulty to relate the economic interests of their countries and peace building in Colombia was always present. So there were some cases where we had an ambassador speaking about its country and its commitment to peace and the importance of the work that the Truth Commission was doing. But at the same time, that country was having extractive industries in Colombian territories. And so the victims came about to say, well, why do we have this person here speaking about peace when a couple of meters from here there is a conflict regarding what this country is also doing in our territory. So that's always a possibility to have, not with all the countries, of course, but that was one of the challenges to have on the one side the narrative of peace building and on the practice these situations in some places in Colombia. And then the other one, which was easier to manage, but also had some peaks, is what I call the proactive stance to support the Commission through offering international exchanges, high-level visits, and conferences. So even though the international community recognized the knowledge and the experience that Colombia had, of course, all of the countries and all of the actors always want to offer external views and international perspectives in the idea to contribute. But whenever you have 3 years of a mandate and all of the actors, most of them are offering, and all of them expect for you to accept this offering, it turns to be very difficult to do your task, because it gets a point where you have to decide if you travel or if you do the work you're meant to do in Colombia. And so there were some moments, I would say, at the beginning, a lot. And then at the end also, and the problem at the end was that the commissioners really didn't want to have any additional international experience because they needed to finish the report. So for the last 4 or 5 months, it was pretty much my task to thank everyone for the invitation, but let them know that the commissioners have decided to focus on what they needed to finish. Not to say that we had great exchanges, a lot of things that we learned and that we did differently because we learned it while looking outside. But the challenge is when you have so many invitations at the same time, that's very, very difficult. And finally, the report highlights recommendations at 4 different levels. One to the international community in Colombia. The main recommendation is to keep on supporting Colombia in its path to peace. The Truth Commission report has 10 or 11 theses, but the first one is that military support is not what we need. What we need is all the support for peace. And so that's kind of like the first recommendation. Well, it has some other elements, but that's the main message to the international community for further peace and transitional justice practice beyond Colombia. There are also some recommendations related to, of course, how to establish meaningful cooperation and relationships in a transitional justice process according to our experience in Colombia. And then we have two additional recommendations to the following up and monitoring committee for the recommendations for non-repetition, related, of course, to how we worked with the international community, so that maybe they can also keep that and continue having this good practice. And also to the Colombian public institutions. As you all might know, we didn't do any introduction to the system for transitional justice in Colombia, but there are other two institutions, the HEP and the unit searching for a person deemed as disappeared, but also about 10 different institutions working in the implementation of the peace agreement. And there is also a recommendation on how to work with the international community according to this practice that was so positive for us and for the results of our work. Yeah, so that's it from my side. I have to say, well, thank you and gracias for listening. I'm very happy to listen to your questions. There are two websites here. The one where the legacy, the public result and legacy of the Truth Commission is, which is comisiondelaverdad.co, which is still available and will remain available on perpetuity thanks to a great alliance with the Kroc Institute. And then Seremos, if you are keen and you are interested in knowing what is happening related to the Truth Commission in Colombia. Still, Emma was mentioning what was her experience when she visited Colombia. You can log into this website and you can see how the events, for example, next week, that is the week of peace in Colombia, what is going on in terms of the legacy of the Truth Commission, and continuously it's being updated. And then I allowed me to share with you 4 different articles and written production that has been done from my side in these 3 years after the Truth Commission ended, and that I began also drafting when I had the privilege to be in Notre Dame. So thank you so much. And yeah, I'm very open to questions and comments from all of you, all of those also who were part of this collective process.
Thank you so much, Maria, for sharing all of that. We'll now have our video response from Dr. Gwen Burnett. So we'll share that and then move on to Q&A, and just a reminder that you can submit questions through the Q&A function.
Hello, my name is Gwen Burnett and I'm a lecturer in social anthropology at the University of Edinburgh. Thank you so much for inviting me to comment on this policy report, and apologies that I cannot be there to speak live. I'm currently on a train with my 9-month-old baby when you're watching this, so wish me luck. First of all, I think this is a really important policy report for its window onto lessons learned from the Colombian Truth Commission from someone on the inside. Maria Prada Ramírez is not a truth commissioner, and we have from other truth commissions in the world testimonies from commissioners, but Maria's been part of the organization and strategy design of the Truth Commission from the beginning, and I think it's really important, her experience as a fellow, taking the time after she finished her work in the commission to study the lessons learned that the Colombian case contributes to truth and justice studies in transitional justice studies in the world. So I'm really glad that she's had this opportunity to share with the Kroc Institute and with others. And I think this policy report is one of her many products from that fellowship. And it's a really important one for, in particular, I think, for its unique focus on the value of relationships and what she calls in the report's title, political relationship building. And I think one of the highlights for me of this report overall is the way it reveals that institutional relationships are human relationships. Now, I study bridge building, which is the practice of connecting people and groups across difficult political divides. And I find this emphasis really crucial because we often don't make visible in academic studies the emotional labor and the time and care that goes into building and maintaining these kinds of relationships. We often focus and analyze policies, outcomes, impact, evaluations, what has changed, what has been done, what is the legacy, what is lasting. But I think that relationships are the fuel that move these things along. And Maria is really kind of highlighting in this report from her own experience and also from some really valuable quotes from specific international partners, how the human relationships between members of the Truth Commission and members of civil society and members of the international community have contributed to the output and the outcome of the Truth Commission and its continued legacy. Before I dive into some more specific insights, I want to explain where I'm coming from with these comments. So my experience has been working with Maria Prada in the Office of the High Commissioner for Peace, where she was before coming to the Truth Commission, where she was directing the pedagogy strategy during the period of 2017 to 2018. And I worked with her as part of the study for my book, The Face of Peace, which is published by Chicago, government pedagogy and disinformation in Colombia. She was kind enough to allow me to follow and observe, as an anthropologist, the work of the Office of the High Commissioner for Peace doing peace pedagogy for a year. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is because I saw how Maria and several of her colleagues from the Office of the High Commissioner for Peace, then after the transition of government from Santos to Duque, left the office to work with the Truth Commission, which was set up, of course, in that same context. And they brought all the lessons that they learned with them. And Maria's work, since I've known her, has been one of relationship building. First of all, in GIZ, where she was working before she was working for the government, where she brokered relationships between the international community and conflict-affected communities. And then in the Office of the High Commissioner for Peace, where she had to embody the state, embody the government, and be its face in a context of distrust, which is what I analyze in my book, The Face of Peace, all of the difficulties of embodying the government and in a context of distrust towards the state, where the state has been an actor in the conflict, but also there is a sort of long-term narrative in Colombia about absence of the state or the state being present in the wrong ways. And then, of course, moving into the Truth Commission, where she was managing relationships with the international community, with civil society, and indeed within the Truth Commission itself, with multiple moving parts and commissioners. And the Truth Commission, in a similar way to what I analysed in my book, The Face of Peace, the Truth Commission was also the face of the state, but of course it was a different kind of institution. It was not the government, and the government itself was a different government, which I'll come to in a moment. And so there were very different kinds of distrust that the Truth Commission faced. Many people didn't feel that they could trust the state with their testimony, and building relationships with them in order to encourage them to do so was really important in a context of ongoing conflict. And there are several really rich highlights in this report, really rich insights, and so I do encourage you to read it in depth, and I would love to be able to listen to Maria's presentation of the report, because I'm sure she'll draw out different things than I will, but I want to highlight three things. The first is the context of this relationship building work. And why that's important. So there was obviously, and Maria in the report talks a bit about the backstory, there was a lot of international involvement in the Havana peace process. The Havana peace process itself was not internationally mediated. Colombia has always, been proud of the sovereignty that it has, and we can do our own peace process. We don't need mediation, but we do want to draw on international expertise. And that drawing on international expertise, that interest in reaching out to the international community, both academia and funding and multilateral relationships, is exemplified by the presence of the Kroc Institute. This was the first time that the Kroc Institute was formally included in a peace accord to monitor the implementation. So I think that openness to international expertise has characterized the peace process. And this carried through in the transition from the Office of the High Commissioner for Peace, which was the team that was set up to support the government negotiations in Havana, to the Truth Commission itself. That kind of interest to draw on international expertise and build with and borrow from and rely on the support of international colleagues. The context in which this was happening, however, was a very different one, and Maria mentions it very diplomatically in the report, and I can be a bit less diplomatic and say that the government of Ivan Duque, who was elected in 2018, was explicitly attacking and undermining the Truth Commission. So the international support, which had been so crucial in the peace process, was even more crucial in the Truth Commission's work. And one of the main ways that the international community saw that it could continue to support the peace process and peace process implementation in this context of direct attacks from Ivan Duque, who had, remember, in the 2016 peace referendum, explicitly campaigned against the peace accord itself, was to bolster the work of the three transitional justice institutions: the unit for the search of the disappeared persons, the special jurisdiction for peace, and of course the Truth Commission. And I think that in particular, the relationship with the Truth Commission has been a very special one, and those relationships were managed by Maria. And all of this to tell you why it's so important to read Maria's report, because she is a very unique individual who has been, in charge of managing a lot of these relationships. Of course, these relationships are not just hers; they belong to many of the Truth Commissioners, and of course, mainly Francisco de Roux, who is a kind of an icon in peace and reconciliation and justice work in Colombia as the president of the Truth Commission. But Maria was the focal point for all of these relationships. So this role of international support to the Truth Commission in that context of government attacks on the Truth Commission and government, the executive literally stigmatizing the president of the Truth Commission and the other Truth Commissioners and undermining it by cutting funding and all sorts of things, was a very delicate diplomatic challenge. And it was a very unique support role that it could play in that context. But, a lot of these international partners really wanted to keep supporting Colombia's path to peace. And I think in the report, Maria does a really good job of showing why some of that desire is not just governmental and strategic, but also personal. There is a solidarity that is almost like a country-to-country solidarity of countries feeling that they have played a role in the injustices globally that have, of course, contributed to Colombia's conflict, and therefore feeling like it is a moral imperative for their country to be financing and supporting in technical ways and political ways the ongoing work of the Truth Commission. The second point that I would like to to finish the first point. So this international solidarity with the three transitional justice institutions, particularly with the with the Truth Commission, the international partners couldn't counter the explicit attacks on these institutions by the executive, but they could contribute greatly to bolstering their legitimacy. And I think one of the ways that this happens, that Maria highlights in the report, is by international representatives being present in many of the Truth Commissional events. And this is symbolic for communities who are coming forward to give their testimony or listen to people give their testimony in a context in which the Truth Commission was being undermined by the executive, because it was a show, that presence was saying, we are standing with you. And this was so important that the support of the international community was maintained despite the change of government narrative. The importance of that cannot be overstated, and I think that Maria played a huge role in achieving that. And the way in which that relationship plays out is nicely detailed in the report. The second point I want to mention of the highlights for me in this report is the insight that we get onto the role of trilateral projects. So one of the ways in which the international community funded the Truth Commission was not just by giving money to the Truth Commission, but by funding three-way projects between international actors, civil society actors, and the Truth Commission. One of the most important insights I found doing the study for my book is that a lot of the peace pedagogy projects that were most highly valued by Colombian communities and civil society actors were the ones that presented a joint face, the ones that were done in partnership with civil society organizations. So, for example, going to do a workshop about the peace accord and deliver a peace pedagogy session, not just as the government, but the government plus a local organization that had the trust of communities in the region they were talking in, went down much better, because the messenger matters as much as the message in peace pedagogy, in any kind of informational outreach strategy. And so it diffused the sense that this was a kind of government propaganda, and it anchored it in kind of territorial realities and appropriation. And I think that this was one of the lessons that the people from the Office of the High Commissioner for Peace, when they moved into the Truth Commission, learned. This collaborative effort of state society working together was a legitimating factor, and it was also a factor in guaranteeing the longevity of the messages that were being portrayed. And this is even more important in the context of a Truth Commission, in which, of course, we're talking about reaching out to people who have been severely affected by armed conflict in context of ongoing armed conflict. Now, I'm a member of one of the many, many organizations that has partnered with the Truth Commission, which is Rodemos el Diálogo, or Embrace Dialogue, which is a peace-building organization that is currently now taking, in fact, the exhibition of the Truth Commission's legacy to Nariño, to exhibit it in Pasto. And this has been so important for Rodemos el Diálogo to be able to support the Truth Commission from civil society, not just saying you should all read the Truth Commission report, but actually doing something with them, acting and collaborating with them, and being part of an activity that is the Truth Commission's activity. So and this has been kind of one of the main strategies also of the legacy, which is detailed, I think, in another one of Maria's outputs from her time as a fellow in Notre Dame, which is the role of partnerships and working with the allies in order to guarantee that after the Truth Commission time period ended, there was going to be continued ownership of its legacy, its outputs among civil society. And it's also crucial that in these trilateral projects, some of the international funding was directed at civil society organizations. And I think we might be very interested in this now in a context of reduced international support financially for peace building. So really important insight there. The third point I want to make is the internal coordination of international funding that Maria set up and handled, which is really nicely outlined in the report. And in my book, I make a critique to international community support to peace building, while recognizing the important role that it's played in Colombia in the Havana peace process with the FARC. The international community has also been responsible for perpetuating mistrust in the state through things like onus and paperwork and projectification, having lots of little projects set up with different state entities or even teams within the same state that don't add up to a coherent whole, and log frames and the obsession with evaluations and products, and making it generally much more difficult for people to do the work that they need to do through their funding logics, and kind of conditioning their funding through strategies that actually don't make sense when you see them on the ground. The report talks about this important lesson learned from that, I think, which is how Maria set up a strategy that all of the different international projects had to go through her and a special committee. Not one commissioner could manage and ask for funding and manage their own project, and not another commissioner or another team getting another project based on the relationships that they naturally have as peace builders and experienced individuals in Colombia themselves who have these relationships. But everything had to go through this committee so that they could present a coherent strategy and prioritize. And I think it's also really interesting in the same line of things that there was a no logo policy. So you don't have the logo of a different funding partner in each different strand of work, each different event, but there's a presentation of a coherent act. And this is really important for presenting a face of peace, presenting a coherent face of an institution, with also, as Mania argues in the report, the emphasis of the visibility centering on the victims themselves. So those are three of the highlights for me from this report. But finally, I just want to acknowledge how difficult it is to talk about truth in a context of disinformation. And we live today in a very different information ecosystem in the one in which the first Truth Commissions were created in the Southern Cone in South Africa. And the Truth Commission had to really grapple with communications in a very big way, with the speed at which information is shared, and you know, we have different brains. Like literally, we have different brains. There's neuroscience research that shows that human beings have different brains because of the speed at which we share information and the internet and the media and everything. And this is all prior to ChatGPT and everything, right? So. What I think is so interesting in this battle over truth is that the Colombian Truth Commission never tried to impose a single truth, but they tried to build a polyvocal one, which allowed for multiple realities, multiple experiences, and the importance was placed on listening to people's truths, listening to the victims, what people had suffered. And the outputs are multiple, somewhat on the sprawling side, I might say, if I was going to be critical, which has its downsides in terms of presenting a unified narrative about what happened, quote unquote. But the upside is that there is an incredible repository of information in the archive, on the transmedia, which is just an extraordinary thing as well to have a transmedia as an output of a Truth Commission. And I really hope that scholars of peace building and of transitional justice will study the archive and the material in it and the legacy for years to come. There are documentaries, there are pedagogical leaflets, there are graphic novels, there are just the most incredible recordings of reconciliation events. And I think that, you know, Maria's report does really important work in showing some of the absolutely fundamental bridge building work that was behind the scenes to enable that output to happen. So I hope you all read it, and thank you very much again for the opportunity to comment.
We thank Gwen for all of those comments, and we have quite a few questions already, so I'm going to try to synthesize some of them to start. We have just under 20 minutes left. Maria, we have a few questions about working with specific international partners. So one of the questions is about the differences and different challenges working with partners such as USAID versus the European Union, and then also how the landscape of cooperation has changed and peace building has changed with the elimination of USAID.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you all. Thank you also, Gwen, for her comments. Yeah, I feel very honored about your both your comments, Emma, and Gwen's comments, and I think this all is possible within a person and a team and an organization whenever you connect to the purpose that is really victims' right to truth and then non-repetition. So I am always keen on repeating that permanently, that's the reason why we do all what we do. And that keep us looking for possibilities and ways out, always. Regarding the question, of course, and I think I highlight one of these examples in the challenges part of the report, which was working with USAID, was challenging. At the same time, it was a very important work to do, and international backing, once again, in the UN Security Council and in Colombia. But they had those days still, I think, a ban, or I don't know, the FARC was part of a list of terrorist actors still in the United States when the Truth Commission was implementing its work. And of course, our work was to bring together those that were before in confrontation. So we had people that were former FARC members invited to a lot of territorial events, but we knew that they were not allowed to be present if the event had any funding from the United States. So that was for us very important to have clear all the conditions from the different partners. Some of them had more, some of them had less. But it was our responsibility, if we were allowing these funds to support the institution, we also needed to be responsible on the way they were going to be used. And so it was, again, a lot of work to know which resources can be used to support which type of activities and to make this puzzle possible. But that was part of our work and of our responsibility, because what we didn't want it was to have more divisions or fragmentation or this mistrust at the events because of these things. So for us, in the center was the purpose, the victims, the persons that were there, also those that signed the agreement. And then we needed to get the support to make that happen. So our plans were not decided according to the sources, the other way around. We received the sources and we were able to see where these sources could be an added value according to what we had already and what we were doing. And yeah, that, for example, if you compare it to the European Union, they didn't have that limitation, but maybe they had other more bureaucratic limitations, or it was always, but of course, the European Union has been engaged with peace building or with peace via peaceful means in Colombia for a long time, and the United States has had more contributions related to winning peace by winning the war in Colombia. So those things were always present, not only in our political analysis, but also in the imaginaries of the people. And so we needed to work with all of that to bring people, all of them together, to advance in peace via peaceful means, via dialogue, via the implementation of the peace agreement. And regarding the second question, it is, of course, in Colombia, as I guess in many places of the world, a very tough situation right now without these resources. But I think it is, again, an opportunity to think out of the box and to see how collaborative initiatives can help somehow face that reality, which is a new reality, and which is, of course, very challenging for the implementation of the peace agreement itself. But I think that's like, once USAID is a way, the money or the support that they were giving Colombia is not going to come from other countries, because other countries are also facing difficult globally situations. And so I think we have to turn the question around and not to think where the money is going to come from, but how can we make differently what we were doing in order to face this reality. And that's what's right now happening a lot in Colombia. A lot of civil society organizations are turning the question around and looking how we can still, it's very difficult, but I think that's the long-term perspective should allow us to have that reflection.
On the note of civil society, we also had a question asking if you could share examples of difficulties working with cooperation related to the Civil Society Truth Commission International Cooperation Triad.
Well, there were a lot of very challenging situations. I have a lot of examples. And I think there is something very important to understand of the context, and that's when the peace agreement begins its implementation, a lot of the funds that were traditionally given to civil society begin to move to go towards the institution created for the implementation of the peace agreement. So they are still funds for peace. They are still a really concrete and important engagement of the international community with the implementation, but they move from the civil society towards the institutions. And that's, of course, again, a very difficult situation for everyone in Colombia, but for the most, for civil society. And it's a very difficult situation because they all actors of civil society which are engaged with peace, of course, want the institutions to work and to function, but they would desire their funding not to go, not to leave. And so what we were very aware of that in the Truth Commission, and we therefore thought we needed to collaborate and we needed to cooperate. And so we had a very broad mandate. We were not capable humanly and of doing that all alone. So we needed to cooperate. And so that was the solution, and was, okay, if we get the funds, but the funds can go to the institute, to the organizations, and the organizations can work contributing to our mandate, which is at the same time their purpose. For example, a lot of women organizations that have been working for peace for years, they wanted to contribute with testimonies, they wanted to do research, etc., etc. So that was, again, one strategy to face that challenge and that opportunity at the same time, because the money was there. It was only in a different way. And so, but coming into that comprehension was not something that happened from one day to the other. And so we needed to align everyone, and that is where dialogue capacities to sit down, to listen, to comprehend, to design, to bring everyone to see a common place where each one has its own contribution and expertise. Then in that moment, cooperation is a possibility for everyone. And so at the beginning, we had a lot of civil society organizations and international actors that were telling us, yeah, we're going to support the civil society for your mandate. And that was great. But then my question was, okay, and what are they going to do? Do they really know what do we need right now in this exact moment of our mandate? And so they were all like, oh, no, we thought if they do theater for peace, that will be a contribution because you are promoting peaceful coexistence. And then I needed to say, well, let me share with you which are our needs in this year. And then let's see if you can contribute to some of those needs or how we can make that happen. And so at the beginning, it was, again, this mistrust between civil society and a state institution. But then dialogue make it possible. So it was kind of telling the international community, it's great that you want to support the civil society, but let's talk all of us, because if not, you're gonna spend the money in something that is very nice and very important, but is not the mandate that we have to have. And if you are interested in supporting the mandate, we have to agree on that. So we had a lot of those experiences. And I have to say, there were some projects that never aligned, that they just didn't have the possibility, or but I would say that 90% of the initiatives were completely aligned, and that was the power of trilateral dialogue.
Thank you. We also have a lot of questions more generally about the Commission's methodology, and particularly how it facilitated participation and made room for marginalized voices. I know that is a huge topic within the Commission, so you can maybe answer a bit, and then we have many resources that are available on the transmedia platform that go into the methodology. The Commission was very great about being very transparent with that. So I'm sure Maria will also direct us to some of those resources.
Yeah, Emma, thank you so much. So I answered directly to the person who asked this question because of time constraints, but I would remind you again to visit the website. I will write it here, which is what we call the transmedia of the Truth Commission, which has all the public materials that the Truth Commission received, but also produced. So besides getting the digital version of the entire report of the Truth Commission. You will get all the methodologies that we used. You will get testimonies. You will read reports that we received. You will see theater and movies and a lot of different materials, databases that you can use to inform yourself about what we produced and answered as our report, or answered as the questions to what happened, when it happened, to whom. But also what we heard. What you will get there are not only the results of the work of this institution, but also the contributions that we received from different civil society, institutional, and international actors. And there you will find one tab which is devoted only to culture and arts, one tab which is related to how we did it, and there you will find all the methodology. And then when you log in, right above, you will find an icon of languages, and there you will get all the information that is available in English. So I think it's great just to visit it and to take advantage of this possibility that we have, that is to have this website available because of the political engagement of the Kroc Institute, who decided when the Truth Commission came to an end that that material should remain online, and there was an agreement signed between the Truth Commission those days and the Kroc Institute in order to preserve these archives online under this website for everyone who would like to access it. So that would be.
And we do also have a webinar series that was run by Maria that assists in navigating all of the different resources available on the transmedia platform. It's absolutely enormous, so it is a great resource to, if you're looking for something specific. Maria ran this series that's still available online in both English and Spanish that covers both the tabs themselves of the transmedia platform, but then also different engagements from a wide variety of the different allies of the Truth Commission. So that link is in the chat now, and those will continue to be available. We're just about out of time, so I want to close. Maria, did you have any final comments that you wanted to make before I close?
I think three elements. One, gratitude once again. Thanks for the Kroc Institute and for the allies to make this possible, because the Truth Commission doesn't exist anymore, but the legacy and the impacts of what we did depend on how long we are capable of maintaining this conversation. So thanks for opening these spaces. Second, for all peace builders and those who connected today, once again, never lose the connection with the task, which is bigger than all of us together, and that would allow us to find always solutions, sometimes better, sometimes less better, but I think that's one of the results also of our work, to maintain focus with all the things that happen all the time. Don't lose the purpose, the main purpose. And the last element, I shared my email, and I'm always happy for exchanges and to have more time to get into detail. So I'm very happy to have further conversations if there is an interest. Thank you so much, Emma.
Thank you, Maria. We really want to thank you, not just for your time today, but for all of the work that you put in throughout the Commission's operations in creating these partnerships and in writing this report to share all of those insights. So we thank you for being here for today, and also for all of the work that you've done previously. And thank you also to the Kroc Institute for hosting this space. We also just wanted to share a few future research opportunities. So if you are working on issues related to transitional justice, to truth commissions, to memory, we have various grants that are available through the Legacy Project to engage further with the Truth Commission, particularly with the transmedia platform and all of the resources that are available there. I think Maria and Gwen also touched on the vast amount of resources that are included on that transmedia platform. And there are so many ways that we can think of engaging with those resources for future research and practice. So if you are interested in taking part in any of that research, please consult these grant applications. We have opportunities that are ongoing for continuous engagement. And thank you all for being here today and for sharing this space with us to work towards continued peace.